Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lauren Izo. Coming up in this edition. A terror attack in Petach Tikvah, the stabbing that broke the calm. We'll speak to the Israel police spokesperson to see where the investigation stands. Then we'll dive into a unique story about a paraplegic who made it his mission to keep Israel's coastlines clean. And we'll introduce some very important members of the ILTV team and tell you why Tel Aviv is one of the most dog-friendly cities in the world. Today we begin with a tragic story. Friends described him as humble and kind. A young rabbi, father of four, stabbed to death in broad daylight Wednesday afternoon. The motive? Police say the perpetrator suffered mental health issues and was not associated with any known militant group. But still, authorities say this was a nationalistic terror attack, and the Prime Minister is vowing a fierce response. Here's a closer look at yesterday's incident. A stabbing attack in a central Israeli city after months of calm. A Palestinian suspect arrested late Wednesday after the Petach Tikvah incident that killed a 39-year-old Israeli rabbi, breaking the record silence. The victim stabbed several times until the attacker fled and was later detained by police. Just hours earlier, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tweeting that for the first time in 56 years, 12 months have passed in Israel without a single death from a terror attack. Until just hours later, when father of four, Shai Ohayan, was stabbed to death.
היום סמוך לשעה 1:10 התקבל דיווח על חשוד שדקר קורבן פה באזור צומת סגולה ונמלט מהמקום. החשוד החל בבריחה, הניידות הגיבו מהר לאירוע, ביצעו מעצר של החשוד כשעל גופו נתפס הסכין.
Police pegged the motive as nationalistic, adding that the suspect, Khalil Doikat, suffered mental health issues and was not connected to any Palestinian militant group. In response, Netanyahu sent his condolences to the family of the victim and promised severe punishment for the perpetrator. IDF units early Thursday raiding his home in a small village east of Nablus in the West Bank, confiscating documents, questioning relatives, and mapping the property for demolition. Meanwhile, hundreds came out to pay their respects. Ohayan was laid to rest Wednesday evening, hours after he was pronounced dead in hospital. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, just 40 were allowed to attend the private service. Family and friends remember him as humble and kind, calling the murder a horrible tragedy. Lauren Izo, ILTV. Israeli security forces continue to investigate the attack. Now to understand more, Mickey Rosenfeld, the Israel police spokesperson, is joining us. Thank you, first of all, for joining us. I want to start with the investigation. Mickey, can you tell us what we know so far and if there's any new developments?
Well, what we've confirmed until now is that the suspect himself came in from the area of Nablus, made his way through in towards the area of Petach Tikvah, and unfortunately, he did, in fact, carry out that stabbing attack horrifically at the scene, stabbing the 39-year-old man to death, who was, in fact, pronounced dead in hospital. Immediately, our units followed the incident. The man himself, the suspect himself, who was also tracked by a local man, a local resident who actually saw what took place and also notified our officers who arrived at the scene. And the suspect was arrested very quickly. He was also armed with the knife, and the investigation is continuing. Overnight, also, there were IDF and border police units that entered the village area, the Palestinian village area in Nablus, to carry out a search and try and gather more evidence and understand how the suspect arrived in the area of Petach Tikvah. There was no specific intelligence that we had received in any way whatsoever about a terrorist attack in the area of Tel Aviv or Petach Tikvah, and therefore the ongoing investigation, intensive investigation, is continuing to try and understand and put the puzzle together why he carried out that terrorist attack and how he arrived at the scene.
Well, the suspect also tried to stab other civilians before a citizen took over. Do you think there's any way this could have been prevented? Do we need to have more police patrols on the streets to prevent these kinds of attacks?
Well, yesterday, throughout the day, both in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, there were regular police patrols that were taking place, as you can see. And we know from the time span, the response was very quick by our officers at the scene, both bomb disposal experts and they worked very carefully without even opening fire at the suspect, as they didn't see the knife on him. He had hidden the knife on him. So the police officers responded in the correct way without shooting and killing him unless there was a life-threatening situation to those actual officers, even though he unfortunately had stabbed the Israeli 39-year-old just minutes before. So the response was fast, the response was rapid. And as of today, one day, almost 24 hours after the actual terrorist attack itself, things are regular, things are calm, but heightened security continues in populated areas, major cities such as Haifa, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv as well.
Mickey, is it possible that we might be seeing the start of a new wave of terror attacks?
Well, security assessments are taking place both by the Israeli National Police, Border Police, Shabak, ISA as well. We saw a stabbing attack that took place a couple of days ago in the area of Rosh Ha'ain, which is also relatively close to the Tel Aviv area. We believe and understand that that was a lone terrorist as well, but we are hoping that there won't be any increase. I mean, we can see that there is determination. There's always determination, unfortunately, by Palestinians to try and carry out terrorist attacks, but increased patrols on a regular basis.
Mickey Rosenfeld, thank you so much for this important update. Meanwhile, the new school year is swiftly approaching, which of course will include remote learning, masks, and social distancing. Still, no extra budget has been approved for the education system, and numbers are still on the rise. Nittany Manson with our COVID update.
The global pandemic currently ravaging the world is not slowing down ahead of the new Israeli school year. Israel reporting 1,936 new cases since Wednesday, and 2 more deaths, bringing the total loss of life to 877. A new bill that would ensure a special COVID-19 funding package for schools will not be implemented after the coalition failed to get enough votes to pass it, angering academic workers. The Finance Committee previously approving an extra 1.75 billion shekels for education. Israel's chief COVID-19 official, Professor Roni Gamzu, now has reaffirmed support from the Prime Minister after urging Ukraine to ban Israeli tourists for the high holidays in order to avoid a mass spread of the virus. Right-wing lawmakers had called him out for discriminating against the ultra-Orthodox, but Netanyahu on Wednesday dismissed any criticism backing Gamzu's position. Meanwhile, a Tel Aviv exhibit is remembering those who lost to COVID-19, but these gravestones aren't commemorating people. They're representing businesses. A sign at the entrance reads, Cemetery of Israel's Economy. The display, created by an organization called the Centers for Social Justice and approved by the municipality, is a comment on the government's handling of the health crisis. Nittany Manson, ILTV.
Well, in Gaza, the virus isn't slowing down either. A lockdown will remain in place at least until Sunday, according to health officials there. The Strip reporting 26 cases and 2 deaths since the latest outbreak. Well, our next story asks, is your feed safe? In a new report, experts say Instagram user accounts are being compromised, specifically celebrities and journalists. Meanwhile, ransomware is also on the rise, according to experts, as well as data exfiltration. And these security breaches are becoming more and more common. So how can your information be protected? Ram Levy, founder and CEO of Confidas and former secretary to the Prime Minister's National Cyber Initiative, is joining us now. He's a cybersecurity expert and is here to break down all the latest on these stories. Thank you, Ram, for joining us.
Hi, Lauren.
So let's start with the Instagram story. It's targeting celebrities and journalists, correct?
Yeah.
Why are these people being targeted and what's happening?
Well, they have accounts with many followers, and therefore the accounts are worth a lot of money. So what hackers are doing, they're hijacking their accounts, and then they're starting to publish posts on their behalf, or they're selling them for money. So it's usually for economic purposes, and that's what they do.
Okay, so as a journalist, somebody that could be targeted in a scheme like this, how can I keep my information safe?
Well, Instagram gives a few tips. The first thing is you must apply two-factor authentication. That's another password that you get once you put in your password. It's very important to make sure that the email that is used to open the Instagram account is secured as well. I'll just give you an example. What hackers are doing, they're hacking the email, and then they're creating some kind of a rule that every security alert that comes from Instagram, you don't actually see it in your inbox, and then they're going to recover the password in your Instagram account. So when you realize that someone stole your account, you start talking to Instagram, and the emails that you receive from their security team don't appear in your inbox. So you got to secure both Instagram account and the email account that has been used to open the Instagram account.
So you have to make sure everything is consistent.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about this ransomware story. Tell us, first of all, how does ransomware work? Who's being targeted in these kinds of attacks?
Well, we hear about a lot of companies, mainly big ones like Garmin, Honda, Konica Minolta, those large corporations that are hit by a ransomware attack, whereby the attackers are demanding money in return to release the networks that are encrypted by computer software. But apparently, the issue is more a small business issue rather than a large corporation issue. The median size of a company is about 100 people. And the amounts that they pay reach about $180,000 per event.
Oh, wow.
And mostly they're criminals that what they do is this is their day job.
I'm curious, how big is this problem in Israel? Are there a lot of small Israeli businesses being targeted in these
Hundreds. Actually, we don't know the number. We had a webinar about it with the Israeli police and the National Cybersecurity Authority about a couple of weeks ago. And the sad reality is we don't know what the true figures are. And the reason is because companies are being attacked do not have to report that they're being attacked, either if they have a regulator that requires them to report, like banks, or there's an insurance company that if you want to get the insurance to pay you for the ransom, then you have to notify the insurance, but they will not tell anyone.
Okay.
And there is no police, because if you call the police, normally the police cannot help you. So we don't know what the real figures are, but we assume that the figures are high, because we know from the insurance companies that there are more insurance claims coming from companies that have been hacked by attackers demanding ransom.
So if I'm a small business and I'm targeted, do I pay?
Well, it's not illegal not to pay unless you understand that you paying is against the law, meaning it can be used for anti-money laundering or for terror financing. This is where the issue becomes complicated. The recommendation is, well, if you gotta bring your business back, then you have no other choice but to pay. So normally, yes, but here's the issue. If hackers know that if you've been hacked once, you'll be hacked again, because most probably your security is not very good.
You become vulnerable.
You become vulnerable again.
All right, Ram Levy, thank you so much for your expertise.
Thank you very much.
Turning now to the Israeli city of Haifa. This picturesque coastal town hides a dirty little secret. It's often ranked as one of Israel's most polluted cities, leading the country in asthma, breathing problems, and even cancers and heart disease. But a new report shows that, thankfully, things are drastically improving. The Environmental Protection Ministry is reporting a 24% reduction in Haifa's pollution just in the past year, and a 34% reduction in pollution since 2 years ago, when a so-called low-emission zone was introduced. Basically, that forbids all diesel-powered vehicles from the area around Haifa's town hall, unless equipped with special filters. It also includes the introduction of over 24 electric buses. Then, with a mind to expand this pilot's results nationwide, Environmental Protection Minister Gila Gamliel saying that Haifa deserves clean air, calling on other cities in Israel to join the program and see these amazing results for themselves. Now, speaking of cleanup, we're going from the air to the sea in this next story. Israelis taking to the coastline to enjoy some fun in the sun while leaving the waters better than when they arrived. Aaron Porras with the details.
This is 29-year-old Saeed Darawshi, a resident from the northern Israeli town of Iksal, who was paralyzed from the waist down at a young age.
في جيل 10 سنين اكتشفوا عندي مرض في العضلات لحد جيل 19 قبل بين 19 وال20 لحد هذا الجيل مشيت عادي تفكدت عادي مشيت عادي سويت كل شيء عادي في جيل بين 19 وال20 صار عندي فيروس في النخاع الشوكي ومع المرض الأساسي صار عندي شلل في إجري الثنتين.
But taking to the sea, where his immobility isn't a problem, Darawshi has since become an avid and very active scuba diver.
ليش اخترت غوص؟ كثير بحب البحر وكثير بتريح لما بكون في البحر. اخترت الغوص كنت مرة في رحلة خارج البلاد ومشان نعمل فعالية من فعاليات اللي بيعملوها الناس لما بيطلعوا بيشموا الهواء. نزلنا جربت الغوص وكثير حبيته مشان فيه إشي اللي أول إشي أنت في سكوت تام، وبعدين في اتصال، في إشي بصير بين جسمك وبين الإشي اللي أنت بتحس فيه لنفسك. لما أنت بتسمعه كل نفس بتطلعه بتفوته أنت حاس فيه.
So in a sense, giving back more than he receives, Darawshe has now also made it his mission to keep his beloved coastlines clean. And far from standing in the way, it seems that if anything, his disease and the wheelchair it put him in reinforce him.
يعني احنا جايين نمسك ونتفرج على شغلات حلوة. ليش بدنا نشوف سمكة عالقة بحبل صيد، بخيط صيد اللي علقان بين صخرتين تحت المي. فمن هناك قررت انه كل مرة انا بنزل بغطس، انا واللي معاي بناخذ معنا كيس اللي بنشوف شو بنشوفه بطريقنا بنحطه في الكيس وبنطلعه معنا بناخذه معنا لبرا. إذا بتحب البحر من فوق فأكيد راح تحبه من تحت أكثر وأكثر.
Aaron Porras, ILTV.
All right, now this next story may make the male half of our audience a little uncomfortable. Sorry about that. It takes us to New Zealand, where new Jewish parents Noam and Elisheva Fogel were faced with a huge problem. How could they perform a circumcision on their new baby boy and without the help of experts? In the Jewish tradition, it's customary to circumcise baby boys at 8 days old as a symbol of the covenant between Jews and God. But in New Zealand, the mohel, or circumcision professional, must also be a certified doctor, and there are none who fit the bill in New Zealand's small Jewish community. So the mohel is usually flown in from Australia to perform the ritual. And here lies the issue. Due to coronavirus lockdowns, no mohel has been able to arrive, leaving the Fogels with a 5-month-old uncircumcised baby and a choice: to continue to wait for lockdowns to be lifted or do the ritual themselves. So, you guessed it, with supervision and help from a local doctor and the community's rabbi, Noam Fogel did the deed himself, of course with all the sanitary precautions. The proud father adding that this is definitely a happy and emotional moment and that they're waiting for the day when they can tell their son what he went through. Okay, moving on now. Most of us think that investing in hedge funds is only for wealthy investors, but the reality is quite different. Smart Funding is an Israeli company specializing in business development and fundraising within Israeli ventures. This week, we're introducing one of their breakthrough companies, TopNet, which holds Tavor Hedge Fund. The company facilitates available and accessible investment for every level of investor. Now joining us to tell us all about it, Tavor Hedge Fund founder and chief analyst, Yoav Zelikovich. Thank you so much for joining me today, Yoav.
Thank you.
Well, let's get into your investment model. Why don't you tell me a little bit about Tavor and how it works?
Sure. Yeah, so I think in Israel, what I thought had been lacking up to now, Israel, the startup nation, is a fund that actually teach the Israelis to invest for the long term. And many investment firms in Israel are dedicated to returns in the short term. We're more long-term oriented, and that's why we opened it up, and that's our investment horizon.
Okay, so how does this method differ from other methods that are usually, used in Israel?
Yeah, great. So first of all, we might talk a bit about Warren Buffett, whose original partnership we based our fund upon. But first of all, we're performance incentivized, meaning that we don't take a management fee if we don't perform. And that puts our incentives much more in line with our investors. Second of all, my own personal money is there, meaning that if I don't perform, I'm going to suffer first. And third of all, it's in a fund that's usually invested in a tax-friendly and via an IRA account. So people you can always access your funds, but it's not easily redeemable. So helping people have more of a long-term horizon.
Well, something that's really unique about you is that you're working with sort of smaller scale investors. So how do you do that?
True. Again, so this is in regards to in fact, we're an IRA. IRA is the initials for individual retirement account, something not very common in Israel, very much more common in the States. But it's possible here. And any individual in Israel who has what's called a keren ishtalmut or a pension fund can manage their funds on their own or via one of our funds. Again, not everybody can invest. Some people may not fit for us, but whoever wants can speak to us, and we can manage their account via an IRA portfolio.
Okay, so let's say I wanted to invest. What is the minimum investment possible that I could have?
Great question. So I don't know about you, but I didn't grow up in a house with $1 million laying around. So
No, I did not either.
So it's very important for me to make sure that we're accessible to anybody. Again, there are various regulatory issues here, but in large, our services can be accessed by any individual with any amount.
Okay, and why don't you look a bit ahead into the future for us and tell us where you see this company going in the next, say, 5 years?
Great. So first of all, we want to continue enjoying what we're doing, and my partner is also here. We're having fun growing this business, and I want to keep it that way. We always, as I said, Warren Buffett is, as many investors' role models, and he, as he always says, tap dances to work every day. So that's, first of all, we want to keep it that way. We don't want to grow just to be large. We want to grow and have personal relationship with our clients. But yeah, over time, our business has been growing almost at 100% rate each year, our AUM, our assets under management. We want to keep that up, keep giving our investors good returns, hopefully, and keep them invested for the long term.
Now, if our viewers want to get some more information about your company and what you do exactly, where can they go to get that information?
Sure. So first of all, I have a blog in an Israeli newspaper, but it's in Hebrew. It's on The Marker. I'm not sure it's translated in English, but I also write a bit on Seeking Alpha. I have some articles. Like Warren Buffett, we write annual letters to our shareholders, and they can be accessed on Seeking Alpha in English as well. And we have a website as well, which you can link to, of course. And LinkedIn, any Facebook. We have a Facebook page where we put stuff up. So easily we can be found.
And like you said, our viewers can go to your website. That's www.smartfunding.co.il/en, correct?
Indeed.
All right. Yoav Zelkovich, thank you so much for coming in and telling us all about your great company.
My pleasure.
All the best. Well, if you're not spending your free time investing like we just talked about, and you're looking for a new hobby, here's something to aspire to. How about bird watching? Well, 2 Israeli photographers have turned their hobbies into award-winning photos, winning first place at the 2020 Bird Photographer of the Year Awards. Moshe Cohen and Gad Shamila each won first place. Shamila for the birds in flight category. He captured Israel's national bird, the hoopoe, and Cohen took home the top spot in the attention to detail category with that awesome picture of an owl. Now, for this next report, we felt that we needed some experts to help us weigh in. So we conferred with the ILTV Canine Unit, getting their take on the latest news in which the city of Tel Aviv ranks as the 3rd most dog-friendly city on the planet. The new ranking, compiled in honor of International Dog Day by German insurance company Koya, lists the top 50 most dog-friendly cities around the world. The criteria includes cost of dog ownership, the number of pet supply stores, dog parks, dog-friendly restaurants and establishments, abandonment rates, and even pet waste pickup. Tel Aviv, then, with 1 dog for every 5 human residents, crazy, ranks 3rd overall, coming behind San Francisco and Seattle in 1st and 2nd place, respectively. But Tel Aviv still ranks high or even 1st for number of pet stores and for number of dog parks and veterinarians per dog, while scoring lower on lifetime ownership costs and a few other factors. And just so you know, those pictures you're looking at right now are the dogs belonging to the team of ILTV. Now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. You probably should make plans to go to the beach because it's going to be a hot one. Friday will be partly cloudy with a high of 96 degrees Fahrenheit or 36 degrees Celsius. Saturday will be even hotter, if you can believe it, with a high of 101 degrees Fahrenheit and 38 degrees Celsius. Don't forget to drink lots of water and wear your sunscreen. And now, before we go, we normally end with a viral internet video, but just for today, let's take a look at what's going viral on our ILTV WhatsApp group.
Come here. Good boy. Oh, hello.
Co-anchor Aaron.
Sit. Good boy, puppy. Stay. Paw. Good boy. Give me the other paw. Good boy.
There is my co-anchor, Aaron Porras, who you might recognize his voice, and his dog, Bodar, who is so cute. And look, he can play dead. My dog, unfortunately, doesn't know how to do that. But maybe I will teach him. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.4 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Lauren Izzo. Thank you for watching.